Hey there, Bourbon Real Talk family. Randy Sullivan here. It's going to be a bumpy ride on this one. It's a complicated subject for me to understand. Today we're going to talk about the word blend, which has kind of become an American swear word, right? So over across the pond in Scotland, blended whiskeys are totally accepted and normal. Here in the United States, we have some laws on the books that use that same word blend that means something different. So first off, let's talk about the word blending. Blending is just marrying together of separate barrels to make a batch of whiskey, typically to seek out a particular profile to fill in holes from barrels that don't have the right profile for that particular brand. And that's not disclosed on the label. In fact, it's assumed. So you can assume that whatever bottle of whiskey you're drinking is a blending together of different barrels unless it says it's a single barrel. Now, the other word, blended, has a lot of legal significance. So blended is a legal disclosure to let you know that the product is not 100% one thing. So let's talk about the different blended whiskeys. The first one is the easiest to understand. There's a blended whiskey called a spirit whiskey. And what that means is that it is 5% to 20% of any type of whiskey. And the rest can be, harmless coloring, flavoring, blending materials, typically a grain neutral spirit, which is uncut vodka, basically Everclear, right? Don't really see those. We don't come across those in the whiskey world. The next category would be a blended whiskey, which is 20 to 50% of a whiskey, and the rest is the harmless, colorless, or harmless coloring, flavorings, and blending materials. And blending materials, again, could be grain neutral spirit, it could be light whiskey, other things. Then you have your blended mash bill whiskey, meaning a blended bourbon whiskey, a blended rye whiskey, a blended wheat whiskey. And that means that it is 51 to 100% of whatever that mash bill whiskey is. That whiskey has to be a straight whiskey, which we're going to do another piece on the difference between a bourbon and a straight bourbon, so on and so forth. And the rest can be, harmless coloring, flavoring, blending materials. But this is where it gets weird. There's another category where it doesn't say blended, it says blend of. And a blend of is a legal disclosure to let you know that it's a blended mash bill whiskey that doesn't have grain neutral spirit in it. So it would have to have something other than grain neutral spirit as its blending material, or it could be 100% straight bourbon or 100% straight rye, but the barrels that were married together were not produced in the same state. And so a blend of is 51+% of a straight mash bill whiskey, bourbon, rye, whatever. The rest of it is, harmless coloring, flavorings, blending materials, but not grain neutral spirit. If it's grain neutral spirit, then it goes back up to that blended mash bill whiskey category. Or 51 to 100% straight mash bill whiskey, but not from the same state. So if that's not clear as mud, I don't know what is. I racked my brain trying to figure out these different categories, and I have a couple of interesting examples for you here. So this is a new product that's coming out of Missouri, I believe. It's called Old Soul, and Goody Goody here in North Texas started bringing it in, and on the back it's got the specific details of what it's blended out of. And when you go through, it's 100% straight bourbons. And so I asked somebody, I said, why, if it's 100% straight bourbons and there's no flavoring, there's There's no blending material, nothing. Why isn't it just a straight bourbon whiskey? Because it says blended straight bourbon whiskey, which, as we just discussed, could mean that it only has 51% of straight bourbon whiskey in it, and the rest could be grain neutral spirit or anything else, right? Well, as it turns out, one of the products that was used in this was made in Missouri, and 2 were made in Indiana at MGP. And so this bottle is actually not labeled properly. It should not say blended straight bourbon whiskey. It should read blend of straight bourbon whiskeys. But this is actually 100% pure product, which typically that word blended means that it's not. Another one that I know caused some controversy, and I still don't understand this one. This is a J. Mattingly product that was done for a private club. Some of them snuck out on the secondary. And this says straight blended whiskey. And in my reading of the law, and it's 27C blah blah blah, the federal code, that's not a category. There's no such thing as a straight blended whiskey. And I could be wrong. I might end up getting my butt handed to me on this one because I've racked my brain to understand it. But that is my understanding of the law. If I am wrong, please let me know. This may spark a lively debate. But you've got, blended, you've got blended whiskeys, you've got blended mash bill whiskeys, and then you have blend of straight whatever mash bill whiskey. So those are the 3 categories according to my understanding. Feel free to correct me, and maybe we'll all learn a little bit more together. So I'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk.